Hello and welcome to another video, and today I am doing the first ever on my channel what I'm changing video game reviews to first impressions. If you want to know more about that, you can go watch my summer update video on the channel for why I'm making this change, why I'm going from fully reviewing a game to just doing first impressions, because I think I think people are going to get more out of a first impression and the idea of like, hey, should I buy this game? Should I wait and rent it? If that's even a possibility for people anymore, or wait for a sale, or do I just avoid it altogether? And for the games that I do play, I think it's more important to do this. First game that I'm doing here, I'm a little late to the party on this one, simply because a lot of life events and stuff happened, unfortunately, while playing this game. And I will also be honest, going forward, I'm not going to have as many hours into first impressions as I do for this game. But today we're talking about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which at the time of this recording, I've put about 55 hours into it before I put a pin in it to play Diablo, which is what I'm currently playing. I will have a video on that shortly, and then I will be putting a pin in Diablo to play Final Fantasy 16. So Diablo is a game that's forever, though. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. So let's talk today about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And if you listen to podcast 572, you've already heard me talk at some length about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but I have not actually had that opportunity to do it on the channel and outside of the podcast. So I have put 55 hours into the game. I was very skeptical when this first was coming out because, as you guys have known and watched my channel grow throughout the years since I started this channel in March of 2017, like right around the time that the Switch came out and we had the Switch. Right on the cusp of, like, we had Breath of the Wild, and then that fall we had Super Mario Odyssey. We had this very good launch year for the Nintendo Switch. It was a hot piece of equipment at the time, and the novelty of just the ability to take that system portably from being a system that's hooked up to your TV to just lifting it up and going and playing the game portably was novel 6 years ago. It's not really novel now. So, and to like putting that aside, like for me, the Switch has gone from being something that I really enjoy using on a day-to-day basis to I avoid like the plague, because as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, most games that are releasing for the Nintendo Switch are bad ports of games. And so I think it's important to cover all that before I talk about Zelda, because I had this preconceived notion going into Zelda that maybe this game wasn't going to be of quality. Maybe this wasn't going to be as high of a bar as it could be, because it's going on a system that is now on 6-year-old hardware that for whatever reason we don't even know what the new Nintendo is going to be. And I'm happy to say, going into it, I was really worried. Am I going to get into this game? Am I even going to care? Because the last time I cared about a Nintendo Switch game at the level that I care about this was probably Mario Odyssey. If I'm being honest, like, there were some other games that came out, but this was the one at this level. Enthralled and happy to say that I was hooked on this game the minute I started it. And I've had so much fun with this. This is the most immersed I've been in a video game in a couple years. It grabbed me immediately and it never let go until I had to put it down to play Diablo. Like, that's how good Zelda is. Like, going into it, it's so well made. There's so many things going on. There's so many systems involved in it, and it's very much a sequel to Breath of the Wild. So if you are a Zelda fan out there and you did not like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is not going to change your idea of if you like this kind of Zelda game or not. If you didn't like Breath of the Wild, it's safe to say you're probably not going to like Tears of the Kingdom. It's not a Zelda sequel. It is a Breath of the Wild sequel, and that's the easiest way that I can describe it. There were a lot of concerns that we're using the same map here, right? And they sure are using the same map here, but you know what? It works. It works really well, because it's a lot more diverse. You have the sky element, which is where you start the game, and then you have the main map, which, you know, you have to fill out again. Now it's changed, it's different. There are things that are in some things that are in different places that you remember from the first game, but for the most part it's kind of the geography of the same map. And then the thing that Nintendo did not advertise is that there's an entire underground area underneath that is becoming more and more apparent as people progress this game and people play through it. It's kind of a mirror world of the top map. So that's pretty impressive. So you're getting like 3 maps in one in this game, which is awesome. With that being said, you know, things come back into this game that maybe a lot of fans didn't care for. You know, weapon durability is a big thing from Breath of the Wild that returns here. You're still constantly breaking and picking up other weapons. I know there are people that do not like that system, and if you did not like that, you're not going to like it here. That being said, I like it. It works well for me. I mean, I said before, one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed about Breath of the Wild is it almost has this Dark Souls aspect to it of like adventure and wonder, that really, honestly, the only other game in the last couple of years that has like really sucked me in that way was Elden Ring. You know, for a Dark Souls game that was open world, that game really sucked me in for 2 months just of exploring and finding different things, finding locations, finding new enemy types, finding this or that in the world where it's like I didn't even know this exists. That exploration is here, and it's so much at the same time. It's awesome. It's just as good as it was in Breath of the Wild, and if not better, because there's more to it. The things that they've improved here, there are shrines in this game, much like the first game. They've improved them. I think they're better this time around. There's a lot more going on in the shrines. Some of the puzzles are really easy. Some of them can be real head scratchers. But the biggest thing that this game changes is that a lot of people complained in Breath of the Wild there were not traditional dungeons. Tears of the Kingdom does have somewhat of a traditional dungeon. There are 4 of them. I've done 1 of them at the time of this recording. But I wouldn't call it a traditional dungeon. It's more like a much longer shrine, if that makes sense. You know, in Breath of the Wild, you had the 4 divine beasts, which were kind of like supposedly the dungeons in that game. This is a little bit different. These do act a little more like a typical dungeon. You will have a boss at the end of each one of these that you have to fight, but it's not, if you're looking for that traditional, like, hey, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours in this dungeon type of Zelda experience, this is not the game for you. So it's a fantastic game. I'm so immersed in it just from beginning to end, all the time that I put in it so far. Like, it's one of those games, like, I got my copy. I think I said this before. If you follow Marble Gallery on Twitter or the Facebook page, but more so Twitter, I had said, you know, I got this game a day late because Best Buy screwed up my order, and they put out that, you know, they sent me the pre-order bonus overnight, but they ground shipped my game. So I didn't get my game for like an extra day. And it was kind of painful because I get to watch other people play the game where I just kind of sat here like, that's cool, I really want to play it. And then the day that I got my copy of the game, I sat down and I just played. Like, the first time I popped that game in, I was like, I'll probably play like the first 30 minutes and be out for a bit. I played for 5 straight hours. So I haven't done that with a video game in a long time. So, and that's just a testament to how good this Zelda game is. It sucked me in immediately, and it never really let go until I had to let go to move on to the next thing that I want to cover. With that, you know, with covering all of that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish this game over the summer. I might even do a full review of it later down the road because it is such a special game. Right now, as it stands, like, and again, I have not played enough of Diablo. I have not even touched Final Fantasy 16 yet. So for just of this time recording, it's easily a top front runner for Game of the Year for me. Just from what I've played, and I haven't even finished it. I think the story, especially, it just continues down that non-traditional path for a Zelda game, and I think that's awesome. I really like the world that Breath of the Wild created, and this is just like a giant exclamation point on that. but they do enough tweaking with the systems and everything that it feels almost, it makes Breath of the Wild feel like a first draft in many ways, where now it's like, I don't know if I could go back and play Breath of the Wild because of all the stuff that they've improved in Tears of the Kingdom. I cannot recommend it enough. If you're a lapsed Switch owner like I was, where it's like, you know, for whatever reason I've continued to collect for the Switch because it's one of my favorite systems to collect for. Like, I have over 50 Switch games, but I don't play the Switch like at all. You know, the only other game this year that I played even a little bit on Switch is Fire Emblem Engage, and I did enjoy that. I should get back and finish that, but that's it. That's the only time I took the time to sit down and play anything on the Switch for more than an hour in the last 2 years, because I've just, if I'm being honest, when we get Nintendo Directs, I am the person that sits there, I make the list in my head and go, okay, which one of these games that's not first party is on a different platform that's going to run it better? And it's just a testament to how old this hardware has become. Like, it's dated hardware now. For the flip side, the negative thing I'll say here about Zelda is visually it's noticeable at times. Yes, Zelda is a game that runs sub 1080p most of the time. It's like in that 900 range. But the other caveat that I'd throw in here that I think is a positive is, because of how immersive the game is, because of everything that's going on and how enjoyable it is, 30 frames is not a problem for me. That was my biggest thing going into it. I'm like, oh man, like 6 years ago when Breath of the Wild came out, sure, it was acceptable. That we were coming on we had a PS4 Pro for about 6 months, if that, and we were just getting ready for the Xbox One X. So we were still in that 30 frames game mindset for console gaming. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Whereas now 6 years later, most games coming out for Series X and PS5 are 60 frames. So to get this at 30, it's kind of like, oh man, I just don't know. And then you have the Ultra Hand ability, which can tank sometimes the frame rate. And it was one of those like, man, I don't know. This is the smoothest 30 frames I think I've ever seen in a video game. Like, you don't even notice. Like, the thing about it is, like, I played 5 straight hours that first day and I didn't even notice the frame rate. It becomes such a forgettable thing when you're so immersed in the game, the story, and the world, and then you realize later, like, oh yeah, the game is 30 frames. You know, oh yeah, that's weird. So, you know, bottom line, for first impressions, Zelda is a huge hit. It's massive. If Nintendo decided, like, hey, this is the end, this is the last, you know, big major Switch game we're going to make, it's a great exclamation point on a very fantastic and extremely successful system, where I'm excited to see what they do next for hardware. But even if it's not, this is just another tremendous Zelda game. But again, go in the mindset of, this is a sequel to Breath of the Wild. This is not a sequel to Zelda, if that makes sense. So, first impressions and how I'm going to start grading stuff on this is a must own, like, without question. Like, if you're a Nintendo Switch owner and you want to buy everything first party, obviously, if you're a Zelda fan, obviously it is worth your time there, even if you're not a Zelda fan. And I'd also argue, like, if you haven't played Breath of the Wild, go Wikipedia the story of that game and then come into this, and I think you'll have a blast. Especially if you're somebody that's like a huge Dark Souls fan and you want that challenge, with mixed in with like some of the most immersive exploration you're gonna find in the game. It doesn't get much better than Tears of the Kingdom. So, anyways, I'd love to know, you know, in the comments below, what do you guys think of Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom? Is it a no-brainer for Game of the Year at the end of the year? Is it one of Nintendo's best games ever made? What do you guys think of it? I'd love to know. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.